Welcome to Friday Friends, RI Elder Info's weekly look at the organizations and individuals providing resources for Rhode Island seniors, caregivers, and professionals.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. It is 9 a.m. on Friday, and you are watching me, Deb Burton, the host of Friday Friends, where every Friday, RI Elder Info brings you information that you or someone you know needs to know about. So please make sure you hit the like button, the share button, all the social media cues that say, hey, check this out. Now, as you know, RI Elder Info is a nonprofit, and we could not bring you this show without the support of our donors and our sponsors. So a huge thank you to Point 32 Health Foundation, United Healthcare, and especially McCarthy Law. Here's a message from McCarthy Law.
Here at McCarthy Law, we practice in the areas of estate planning, long-term care planning, elder care law, and residential real estate. Our focus is really on providing peace of mind to our clients.
If you're interested in scheduling a consultation with our office, you can feel free to reach out to us at 401-541-5540. You can also reach out via website at www.mccarthylawri.com. You also should check out our social media, both on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for some helpful tips and tricks.
Hi, Tammy. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Great. It's great to see you. So tell me, this month is Medicaid Awareness Month, I saw. What do people need to be aware of when it comes to Medicaid?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a loaded question. There's so much that goes into to Medicaid, but I want to start by saying that I am not an attorney. I am the Medicaid paralegal at McCarthy Law. So I want to preface that so that any information I provide is not considered to be legal advice, because that's not in my scope of practice. So that being said, what do you want to know about Medicaid?
Okay, well, let me back up then.
Okay.
Medicare does not cover long-term care. And a lot of times people end up really surprised by that and are really wondering, okay, I or my loved one, mom, dad, family, friend, need help. How do I pay for it? So what does Medicaid do? How does it kind of work?
Okay, well, Medicare is the insurance that pays for hospital care and pays for medical care. But Medicaid is the program that pays for residential care. It pays for nursing home care, and it also pays for sometimes getting assistance while you keep your loved one at home. It can pay for some caregiving assistance there. It takes a lot longer if you qualify for Medicaid for community-based care, that's a longer process in getting yourself eligible and being able to receive the resources in the home.
And the last time I saw, and I haven't looked recently, if all of the paperwork is done, everything is pretty perfect, done with a bow on it, a Medicaid application takes about 90 days, so about 3 months. Is that still kind of the rule of thumb?
We generally tell our clients 3 to 6 months. It just kind of depends on how complicated their finances are. And some people think they're submitting an application that's tied up with a bow, and there's things in the background that they didn't understand that counted, like the cash value of life insurance policies or secondary residences and things like that. So yeah, but generally 3 to 6 months.
Okay, so if everything's nice, it's not maybe not the best choice if it's a crisis planning because the help isn't going to come next week.
Well, that's true. It's not going to come next week. However, we can do crisis plans, emergent need Medicaid planning for applicants, and we can submit the application. Say it's April now. If we had all the information that we needed to submit an application during the month of April, we have until the last business day of the month to submit an application, and it's considered to be an application for April 1. Assuming that you're financially eligible as of that date. Then it'll take them their time to process the application. But assuming the person is in a nursing home, then the nursing home just puts them onto status of Medicaid pending.
Okay.
And then you'll be, we don't submit, if you submit the application through us, we don't submit applications that we know aren't going to be eligible. So, I mean, because we know what we're doing, and our attorneys know what they're doing, and so as long as the person has told us, all of the prior gifting and everything, you can be pretty rest assured if we submit the application, it's going to be approved. It just might take a while to get it there.
And so when you're talking about the amount of finances that someone has, I think we might have some information we can bring up on the screen, and then maybe you could provide some details on that.
Sure.
In relation to what is the financial guidelines, the assets, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Now, my understanding is that Medicaid looks back 5 years. Is that still true?
Yes, that's true. Medicaid has a very sophisticated system where they can look at any banking transactions within the last 5 years for if the applicant is single or if they're married. They can see for both of the people any transactions over $2,000, and that triggers them to say, okay, well, what was this transaction? If we are processing an application, we're going to get what's called an additional documents request, and they're going to say, please provide us the bank statement for this year and this time frame, and then they're going to want us to explain where did that money go, if it isn't obvious. Obviously in some bank statements you can see, okay, well, that was used to pay the taxes, or it was used for some legitimate home expense, but they're looking to see, was that money gifted? That's what they're looking for, because they want all the money that's in the last 5 years. They say it should be eligible or available for you to pay for your care. So for every $10,195 that you might have gifted in the last 5 years, they can assess a penalty period of 1 month. And that means that in that 1 month of penalty, then you have to pay the full cost of the nursing home. Whereas once you're eligible for Medicaid and you're not in a penalty period, then you only have to pay nursing home the amount of what is called the patient share, which is based on your gross income minus your health insurance premiums, minus whatever the state says the personal needs allowance is at that time. And then the balance of that is what you pay to the nursing home. If you are married, sometimes the community spouse is eligible for some of that income too, if the applicant is the primary breadwinner.
So we were able to get the slide up that
Okay.
shows some of the numbers here.
Mm-hmm.
For an individual,
Mm-hmm.
how much are they allowed to have liquid assets specific to Rhode Island? And I want to make sure that everybody understands who's watching that this information is specific to Rhode Island because Medicaid eligibility is determined by each state. So if you're watching in another state, these numbers may not apply.
That's correct.
Sorry, Tammy.
That's okay. That's okay. So an individual applicant can have $4,000 of resources, of liquid resources, and that means like bank accounts, money markets, stocks, bonds, and then the cash value of life insurance. And a lot of times people don't realize that the cash value of life insurance is an available asset. So that's what sometimes trips people up. If they're applying and they don't have help. If you're a married couple, and you were applying, the asset limits are a little bit different. They can have between $31,584 and $157,920. And that depends on all of their available assets and some different situations. Some assets don't count, like if you have a 401k or an IRA, as long as you're taking your required minimum distribution, then that asset is protected and it doesn't count towards that $4,000.
And so when we're talking about 401ks and IRAs, those things are way above my pay grade. But if people have questions about like how does a minimum distribution impact Medicaid, is that something that McCarthy Law can help people with?
Yeah, we definitely can help you with that. And we have, if you want to apply for Medicaid, it's highly advisable to have an elder law consult with us or someone else that knows the Medicaid process, because there's a lot of things that we can do to protect your assets. So say you have, much more than $4,000 available, there are ways that we can protect a portion of those other assets by doing what we call a spend down. And depending on your financial situation, it decides how that is accomplished. And the attorneys can advise you on that. And they'll work with your financial advisor too, with your permission, to get all of those things arranged.
Get all those ducks in order.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're married and maybe your spouse has a medical event that is going to result in them being in a facility long-term, or maybe they have dementia or Parkinson's, these illnesses that are going to progress.
Mm-hmm.
Does all of your money and the house have to go to the nursing home? Or is the spouse in the community able to at least keep something to live on?
Yeah, well, that's part of the process of the spend down, is making those resources be available to that community spouse, and then protecting the home. If there's a home if they own a home and the applicant is on the deed, we will transfer that deed over to the community spouse. That protects that asset. And then that's where that asset limit of up to $158,000 or $157,920 that the community spouse can keep comes into play. But it's a really complicated scenario. There's so many things that can be done that can protect your assets, that it's just very case by case. Everybody's financial picture is different, and so it's not a one size fits all kind of situation.
Yeah, I especially when there's property and money and retirement accounts. And
right.
I noticed on the list here that some of the exempt assets are the funeral expense trust limit. What is a funeral expense trust?
Well, people can purchase a prepaid funeral plan for themselves and also for their spouse, and that's a good way to use some of your assets to get you spent down to the allowable limit. And obviously, we all at some point need to have final expenses paid in whatever method we wish to have that happen. If people are going to have a funeral, that $15,000 limit is very reasonable. If a person is going to choose another method, they might want less to be attributed to that. But those are protected contracts that they make with a funeral home or crematory or whomever they're going to work with. And then Medicaid doesn't consider those assets to be available. We still report them to Medicaid, or to DHS, but they don't count in your asset limit.
Got it. But I think when you're looking at protecting things, have the conversation before breaking out that paperwork and signing on the dotted line and sending it off.
Right.
So when folks are meeting with McCarthy Law or whoever they would like to help, or if they want to try to do it on their own, what documents should they gather ahead of time?
Well, if you're working with us, we're going to give you a list, that a very comprehensive list of what you need. But you need things like your birth certificate, your social security card, your income documents. The birth certificate is to prove that you're a citizen. You need your social security statement that shows the gross amount of income that you get. You need pension statements. You need life insurance statements if you have life insurance policies. And then we need a minimum of 6 months of bank statements for any financial assets. So whether you're working with a financial planner like Charles Schwab or something, we'll need 6 months of those statements or 6 months of any bank statements. If you have stocks or bonds or things like that, we'd need to know about that. Pretty much any financial assets. Guess I should have pulled up the list ahead of time. I didn't think of that. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head what else we need. We need to know if you're a military veteran. If you are, then we prefer to have a DD 214 that we can provide along with that, because sometimes there's some additional benefits that are available to you with that. I think,
that's why people should give McCarthy Law a call, is to figure out how can McCarthy Law help and what are the documents to kind of gather.
Yeah, that's true. And like we said, we can do emergency planning, but it's also always better to do the planning ahead of time. So if you have time and you meet with our attorneys, maybe you're just going to do estate planning to start out with. Maybe you're going to do a trust or those kinds of things. But, if you explain to them what your concerns are about the future, do you have medical concerns or things like that where Medicaid might become a need, or protecting assets is a need, we definitely can help you get that arranged sooner than better. I mean, if we can do it before the 5-year look back, then a lot more assets can be protected. But if it's within those 5 years, there's still a lot of things that can be done to protect assets.
Got it. And so it's really important to do that ounce of prevention, because the ounce of prevention is always far less expensive than what it takes in a crisis, I'm sure. And it's better to be able to have the luxury of time to gather these documents, because, crisis often happens after 5 o'clock on a Friday.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Scrambling. It's like,
Yeah. One ththing we didn't talk about, though, that is one of my biggest pieces of advice for people, whether you're planning for Medicaid or not, it applies to everybody, is make sure that all of your assets have beneficiaries designated. Make sure that if you have a spouse who is not well, or who you think might need nursing home care at some time in the future, it's best not for them to be the beneficiary, but you want the beneficiary to be whomever you want it to be. And if you're doing beneficiary planning and you're not in a crisis situation, it's a lot easier. Contact your life insurance companies and say, hey, send me the beneficiary designation form so I can review it and make sure that I have it updated to be who I want. And the same goes for your bank accounts. Some banks are really good working with a power of attorney and some are not. And so sometimes it's really difficult if you need to make those changes in a hurry, in a crisis situation. Because if you have, say, a bank account and the applicant is the beneficiary of that, and heaven forbid something happens to you, then they receive all of those funds and then they become ineligible if they've already been eligible, because they might receive those assets. So that's really important. And then the other part of that is If there's a beneficiary on all of your assets and accounts and your real estate and everything, then you don't have to open probate. But if you've been receiving Medicaid and then you have to open probate, then Medicaid can file a lien against your probate estate, to be repaid all of the costs that Medicaid has paid on your behalf. So it's just really good advice for everybody to make sure you've updated your beneficiaries on whatever you have.
I love it. Yes, update the beneficiaries on your bank accounts, your life insurance, all of the financial assets that one might have. I love that. And that's something that we're all empowered to do as the owners of these accounts. Very
Right.
simple and straightforward. I love it.
Yeah. You know, and another thing that I just thought of as while you're doing those processes and you're contacting those people, you can also ask them for the contact form so that if for some reason you were not able to speak for yourself, they usually have forms that you can say, I would release information to such and such a party. You know, and so then if you become unable to do that in the future, it's easier sometimes to do that than to use the power of attorney. All of my mom's financial accounts, I assist her with, and I have those forms filled out for everybody because then I can make phone calls on her behalf. She's blind and almost deaf, and so, you know, making calls is sometimes difficult. I mean, she's completely lucid, but it's, you know, she can't do anything online. So,
Right. And so
you know,
many things are online now.
yeah, it really is. So that's a good thing to do as long at the same time that you're doing beneficiary updates.
That's good. And it sounds like it's very much like a HIPAA release form that you would give to your doctor's office. It's just sort of the financial HIPAA version.
Yeah. And I, you know, I'm pretty sure they have situations where you can say that only if I'm unable to speak on my behalf, then this would kick in. So it's sort of like a power of attorney, but since some companies are not real great about accepting a power of attorney, or they make it so much more difficult, or they need to go through their legal department or whatever, it really can lengthen the timelines if you need to do anything in a hurry.
Got it. We covered a ton of information today, Tammy, and I really appreciate you coming on. If people have questions, is it best to just reach out to your office at the 407-5975 number?
It's 401-5. You know, I don't call my own office. 401-575. What is the number? I can't even think of it. Oh my goodness.
We'll drop it in the chat.
Oh my goodness. I'm so embarrassed.
That's okay. You don't call yourself.
Yes. Yeah, I don't call myself. So yeah, just call the main McCarthy Law number. How embarrassing that I can't think of that.
Oh, so sorry.
I tried to prepare for other things I didn't even think about.
Hey, that's real life. We don't often call ourselves.
Oh my goodness, yes. All right. Anything else you'd like to ask? To embarrass me further?
Number?
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? I'd love to know that.
Oh, Tammy, thank you so much for coming on today. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Folks, this was a great conversation with Tammy in regards to the Medicaid application process. There are so many little nuances that are so important that we have to pay attention to if applying for Medicaid. And again, Medicare does not cover long-term care. And if you don't have the financial resources to pay privately, it is very likely that you'll need to apply for Medicaid. And that is where all these nuances about whether or not something is or isn't an acceptable expense in the process, the 5-year look back, all of those details. If you have questions, I really encourage you, give them a buzz over at McCarthy Law at 407-5975. I am so glad that you are all able to join us today. I hope you had some laughs, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. In the meantime, be well and be kind.
If you like this video, please follow us on social media and subscribe on YouTube. For more information, visit rielderinfo.com or call 401-585-0509. If you have any questions, email deb@rielderinfo.com.